the conservative movement and try to present themselves as something they're not. And unfortunately, Karl Rove keeps taking it to the next level. First, I want to play you a clip of Karl Rove on Bill O'Reilly's show last night, and then we'll go from there. Mark, this is inside the Beltway crap. I'm afraid not. This is a man who has access to $500 million, who's draining resources out of campaign funds, out of campaign groups that could be used far more effectively than his disastrous record. And I'll get into that again, too, because he goes onto these shows endlessly, one after the other, twisting, spinning, sounding so much like Barack Obama. But I'm telling you, we're not going to be able to win big elections. We're not going to be able to turn the country around. We're not going to be able to do those things that are going to secure the future if we don't deal with this. Most political advisors to a president, after their president has left town, they leave town, or they go into some second, third, fourth tier position, or they become lobbyists or what have you. In Karl Rove's case, he's trying to run the Republican Party out of his back pocket in some palatial office in Washington, D.C., as he flies all over the country, meeting with all kinds of millionaires and billionaires, separating them from their money by spinning. Now, first I want to play, and by the way, I have no criticism of Bill O'Reilly. I thought his interview was pretty straight. It was soft, but I don't think these guys really know what's going on. There's a lot of inside baseball, so I don't cast any aspersions on him. But here's part of it. Cut to go.
Mr. Rove's prediction in the election was wrong. But he remains a major player within the Republican Party and is starting a new political action committee called the Conservative Victory Project. The problem, some conservatives don't like it.
Who the hell died and named Karl Rove queen for the day? As somebody who was active in the Reagan campaign in 76 and 80 and served in his administration for 8 years, I don't remember Karl Rove.
So I don't know why they're upset. I mean, you just want Republicans to win, right? I mean, I guess that's what your new crew is about, right?
Yeah, well, and look, for Mr. Levin, I was the director of the Texas campaign for Ronald Reagan in the fall of 1980 and was appointed by President Reagan to sit on the White House Fellows selection panel. So I didn't meet him, he didn't meet me, but he wanted to know where the heck I was then. Well, that's where I was.
And then there's this. Cut 3, go.
We gave more money, spent more money on behalf of these Tea Party candidates than any other group in America. Any group. I love these groups that are criticizing us, saying, well, they're fake conservatives. Well, I repeat, we spent $30 million for Tea Party Senate candidates and $25 million. There's no group that comes close to what Crossroads has done in terms of financial support for Tea Party candidates.
And
the question is not Tea Party or not. It's not the question of Tea Party or not. It's a question of whether or not they're a bad candidate or not.
I don't call Karl Rove a fake conservative. He's not a conservative. He's an operative. He's a real operative. You know, I don't even think he tries to be a conservative. All right, so let's break this down. He tells Bill O'Reilly, quote, I was the director of the Texas campaign in the fall of 1980. I was the director of the Texas campaign in the fall of 1980. No, you weren't. Then you're on the Hannity show, and you said here, I'm pulling together my notes here, you said that you were the, come on, Marco, get your notes together, that you were the executive director of the Texas Reagan-Bush Victory Committee. This was the campaign arm in the state. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you exactly what happened here, because I worked in the Reagan campaign in 76 and 80. And served for 8 years. We went back and looked, as did Craig Shirley, who's the #1 biographer for Reagan. And he went back today and spoke to a number of people in Texas as well. And also Lynn Knopfsinger, just stick with me, who was a top advisor to Reagan since his days as his press secretary when he was governor and so forth, and worked on his campaign and came with him to Washington. What happened was that Karl Rove supported George H.W. Bush in the primary against Reagan in Texas, just as he had supported Gerald Ford in the primary against Reagan in 1976. So in 76, he supported Ford against Reagan, and in 1980, he supported Bush, 41, against Reagan. Reagan beat Bush in his home state of Texas. I believe it was 51-47, or thereabouts. So Reagan beat Bush in Texas. The governor of Texas, who was employing Rove at the time, was Clemens. And he was a Bush guy. So after the convention in Detroit, when Reagan was nominated, and after the convention in Detroit, after Reagan chose Bush to be his running mate, then the governor of Texas insisted on running the Reagan campaign in Texas. He insisted on pushing aside the name of a man, Ernie Angelo, who was the chairman of the Reagan primary effort in Texas. So Reagan wanted peace. He wanted to win. So what they did is allow the governor to set up this pro-Reagan Bush group, and that's what they did. They set up this pro-Reagan Bush group called the Texas Reagan Bush Victory Committee. As Rove himself told Sean Hannity on the radio today, this was the campaign arm in the state. But it wasn't the head of the campaign. It wasn't the actual campaign organization in the state. His boss was Clements. So that's why when Karl Rove tells Bill O'Reilly, I was director of the Reagan campaign in Texas, and then the title changes when he talks to Sean Hannity, I was, the director of the Victory Fund, the Reagan Bush Victory Fund. That's why Victory Committee. That's why he can't get his title straight. Now, you may say is in the weeds. It's really not. Rove has never been a Reagan guy. Rove has never been a conservative. Rove has never seen the big picture, which is why he was advising George W. Bush, expand Medicare, nationalize public education, and on and on and on. He's never seen the big picture. He was Ford 76. He was Bush 80. That's okay. I'm just making a point. You're perfectly wonderful men. I'm just making a point. He dresses up in drag as a Reaganite, and he's not. And after the Detroit convention, it was 4.5 months till the general election, and he headed that group for the governor of Texas for 4.5 months because it was called the Reagan Bush ticket. The Reagan Bush ticket. And there's some reporting out there that somebody fired him for leaking or something. I don't know all the facts around that. And I don't need to go there, and I don't know what all that was about, but maybe somebody will ask Rove next time they interview him. But this is his great stand with Reagan and conservatism. He tells Bill O'Reilly, look, I was appointed by Reagan to sit on the White House Fellows Selection Panel. Now, ladies and gentlemen, since the overwhelming majority of you never served in a presidential administration, there are committees, there are panels, there are boards. And what presidents do is they give out some of these perks to some people. These are not serious policy-making positions. For the most part, they're not senior positions. And apparently Rove got one of those. Well, he should have, because the Vice President of the United States, George H.W. Bush, was his guy. And the Chief of Staff to Ronald Reagan was James Baker, his guy. But he wasn't in any major job or any major position. That's why our paths never crossed. Because nobody knew who the hell Karl Rove was in the Reagan administration, to be perfectly honest with you, other than the Bush guys. And even they didn't fight like hell to give him any big job. I'm just being honest. So that's 1980. That's 1980 when he goes on TV and says, oh, yeah, well, look, I was head of this, I was head of that. He's puffing up his resume. And any reporter listening can go back and talk to Ernie Angelo or Tom Pauken and ask them about it. So when it came to these primary battles, Rove was never a Reagan guy. And now he wants to get into these primary battles in the states, and I assume for president, and he won't be a Reagan guy again. He said something today on Sean Hannity's show that exposed him again. It was absolutely remarkable. He said he would not have gotten involved in the Utah fight between Bob Bennett and Mike Lee because they were both good candidates. No, they weren't both good candidates. Mike Lee was a good candidate, a great candidate, a solid conservative, and Bob Bennett had been voting for big government and was moving further and further left. And Rove said today on Sean Hannity's radio show he would have stayed out of that one because, those two candidates were kind of equal. He also said, listen to this, that they would have stayed out of Texas because you had several good candidates running there, the former mayor of Dallas, the Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst, and Ted Cruz. They would have stayed out of that one, too. Let me tell you something. He wouldn't have stayed out of that, which would have been bad enough. He would have thrown in with either Dewhurst or the former mayor of Dallas. He's also running around with that little whiteboard that he has, the idea he stole from Tim Russert. I think they both look stupid doing it, but there you are. We spent $30 million on Tea Party candidates. The man reportedly raised $400 million. $30 million on Tea Party candidates? So he had $310 million left over? So he spent less than 10% on Tea Party candidates. Okay, fine. And how did he do? It was a disaster. A disaster. They lost the overwhelming majority of Senate races they were involved in at the general election level. And notice he never pulls out that whiteboard and lists all the liberal and moderate and establishment Republicans he funded, how much money he poured into their races, and the outcome of those races. Hawaii, North Dakota, Montana, Connecticut, Florida, on and on. He never pulls out that whiteboard. Why not? Because that would show the full extent of their failure and how they blew the money. Spent $127 million on Romney. You, ladies and gentlemen, you in front of your televisions, do you think that money was well spent? Or do you think the commercials were utterly ineffective? And is it commercials? Is that alone what wins elections? Or is it grassroots organizing? And how much of that did they do? Today they're attacking the grassroots